Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, what is going on? My name is M1K3 and welcome back to the channel. Today we're talking about how to play Endgame at a very high level. But before we get into that, around 40% of you guys watching are not subscribed. So if you have been enjoying the daily uploads, consider subscribing. Now, let's get into today's episode. This is the third and final part of my series, how to play all 9 zones in Fortnite. So if you haven't watched part 1 and 2 that I released yesterday and the day before, I highly recommend you to do so, because this video is only gonna go over the 7th, 8th, and final zone. So sit back, relax, and let's get into it. Okay, so after you've gone all the way into the first moving zone, you should have at least 8 seconds to prepare for the second moving zone. What's important when you get ready to rotate wherever the second moving zone pulls is that you tell your teammate very clearly to stay on you and get ready to rotate the millisecond the second moving zone pulls. From the second moving zone and all the way until the final zone closes, you pretty much want to be frontage at all times. And you want to do everything in your power to not get cut off. If you rotate instantly from deep inside the first moving zone to where the second zone pulls, you will be the first team that rotates and establishes a good position in the second moving zone. Now, I have to go over different ways the second zone can pull, because whether the zone pulls max distance to the left, right, or if it pulls back, there are different ways of playing these zones. So pay close attention to what I'm about to say. If the second moving zone pulls a max distance, or in other words, keep going, you have to, as with all other directions, rotate the millisecond it pulls. Listen, when the second moving zone pulls max distance, it means we have the perfect opportunity to go all the way in front and start looking back at height. What we want to do is simply just cranking up and claiming it. And remember, you do not want to stop cranking to shoot bullets. This will stop your momentum heavily when going for height, and a third-party team will inarguably see that you are fighting the height team and come out on top. What you want to do is go all the way in front of the zone, build away from the team baggage. You do not want to connect to them, and you want to commit to claiming high ground. This is as long as the team up there is not already extremely established. Height is better than ever, and you must have the guts to go for it when the odds are in your favor. Height wins games, and if you play your game out correctly, it will definitely be a walk in the park to take it frontage in the second moving zone when it pulls max distance. My most important tip is to simply just build over the height instead of trying to fight them, so keep that in mind. If the second moving zone pulls either to the left or the right, you want to maintain the dead side you claimed for yourself by going all the way into the first moving zone. If the zone does end up pulling like this, it's important that you don't play too far to the dead side, because you want to have the chance of getting refresh eliminations at all times. What you want to focus on is being the team most on the dead side, but still be close enough to the other teams to have the opportunity to get eliminations. Okay, lastly, for the second moving zone, we have if it pulls back. You just want to follow your little cute first moving tarp, right? Well, no, wrong. If the second moving zone pulls back, you want to build around and get to the dead side. If you go back the way you came into the second moving zone, then you will be heavily contested, and you'll have a much bigger chance of getting randomly W-keyed by a scuffed team. And that again can scuff you. And if you played your mats right, like I talked about in part 1 of this series, then you should have more than enough mats to build around with the second moving zone pulls, and all of a sudden, you'll have the best position moving into the third moving zone, giving you the chance of getting a ton of free refresh eliminations. The one thing you want to keep in mind in the second moving zone is always getting all the way into it, just like the first moving zone, because you need to claim a potential dead side considering where the third moving zone pulls. The third moving zone is a zone where a lot of people feel like they don't have any claimed space, meaning it becomes very tight and stressful. This is far from optimal, but if you play the second moving right and claim all the way into the zone and prepare a few seconds before the third moving zone pulls, you will have an advantage over the rest of the lobby. And that brings me on to the topic of the third moving zone. The zone swap between the second and third moving is the perfect time to claim low ground, as long as it doesn't pull back. If it pulls back, you once again want to build around and claim the dead side. But if it pulls max distance, on the millisecond you see where the third zone pulls, you want to drop down, slide frontage, and claim. Don't be afraid to take a few ticks of zone if you have to. This is if you're challenged by another team going for low ground. Zone swaps really are the perfect time for layer changing, and at one point in every game you play, you have to make the call. Do I go for low or do I go for height? Playing mid ground will most of the time only grant you a top 3, 4, or 5, and we're playing to win and qualify for the duo and solo cash cups as well as FNCS. And just like with the first and second moving, it is absolutely detrimental that you claim all the way into the third moving zone. The zone swap between third and final moving is often the zone most players find themselves with a low HP and nearly no mats. So that's why you need to be a structured player and pre-claim into the zone so that when the players that are scuffed drop down with low HP and no mats, you get all the eliminations. Keep in mind, height is still king, but if you do not have the chance to take it, playing low ground, like I've said, is by far the best second option. What you also need to keep in mind is good communication goes a long way. Trust your duo when he says he has a drop down elimination, but do not let that stop you from claiming frontage and getting ahead. Okay, so now that you've done everything perfectly up until this point, we have the final moving zone. And this is the one where you have to stay extra cool and extra focused. If you have claimed low or high ground, like you hopefully have, you are good. All you need to do is have patience. If you're playing duos and see that two players drop down on your wall, hold the wall a little bit, place a cone in your box, and tell your teammate you have a duo on your wall. This way, you will nearly guarantee to kill them. However, if you insta-open on them without communicating with your teammates, this can lead to you getting a top 10 finish instead of a top 2 or a win. If you have height, all you need to do is apply pressure at all times, and you've pretty much won the game. The last zone really all comes down to not panicking, playing very patiently, and of course, always claiming ahead. Always being the team most in front of the zone. If you do that, you will succeed in the final moving zone. Guys, that is gonna be a wrap for this 3-part video series. I had a ton of fun making these videos, as I feel there really isn't much high-tier educational content on how to succeed in all the different zones in Fortnite. I really hope you learned a few things you can implement into your own game, and at the same time, I hope you found the videos somewhat entertaining. With that said, I also have to mention that the support recently has been incredible. And I'm not sure what I do to deserve all of the love that I get, but just know I appreciate all the kind words so much more than you might think. On that note, we are wrapping up today's episode. I really hope to see you all tomorrow, the same time as this one is released. Other than that, please go on to have an amazing day. My name is M1K3 Editz. Stay safe and take care.
You know me, she'll know